Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation, Gauri Mahalla Panjwa. Jako Apni Kirpa Dharai, so jan rasna naam uchare. Har bisrat sehsa dukh vyapੈ, ਸਿਮਰਤ ਨਾਮ ਪਰਮ ਭਉ ਭਾਗੈ ਰਹਾਉ। ਹਰ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਸੁਣੈ ਹਰ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਗਾਵੈ, ਤਿਸ ਜਨ ਦੁਖ ਨਿਕਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਵੈ। ਹਰ ਕੀ ਟਹਿਲ ਕਰਤ ਜਨ ਸੋਹੈ, ਤਾਂ ਕੋ ਮਾਇਆ ਅਗਨ ਨਾ ਪੋਹੈ। ਮਨ ਤਨ ਮੁਖ ਹਰ ਨਾਮ ਦਿਆਲ, ਨਾਨਕ ਤਜੀ ਲੈ ਅਵਰ ਜੰਜਾਲ। ਮਨ ਤਨ ਮੁਖ ਹਰ ਨਾਮ ਦਿਆਲ, ਨਾਨਕ ਤਜੀ ਲੈ ਅਵਰ ਜੰਜਾਲ। This passage more or less describes the process in Sikhi from the physical recitation of the mantra, of the Gurbani mantra, all the way to self-realization. So let's take a look at this. It starts off in the Rahau by saying, Har bisrat sehsa dukh vyapੈ. Har bisrat, when the har self remains unmanifest, undisclosed, then the state of mind is such that it is riddled with doubt and anxiety. Sehsa dukh vyapੈ. Vyapੈ attaches itself, clings to the mind. And Simrat Naam Param Pau Bhagya. This is what happens when the Har Self is made manifest through self-knowledge. Simrat Naam. Naam is the recalling of that self-knowledge, that wisdom, those virtues, and the love that goes with it. When that happens, then Param Pau Bhagya, the mind's wavering and the mind's existential angst disappears. That is the crux of the problem. So how does one begin? And in the first verse, there is a hint. It says, Jako Apni Kirpa Dharai. Jako Apni Kirpa Dharai. The conventional understanding of a Jako Apni Kirpa Dharai would be that when divine grace is benign upon an individual, then that individual will Sojan Rasna Naam Uchare. That seeker will recite Rasna, will enunciate Naam. We'll see what that means. But in our translation, I have chosen to render Jako Apni Kirpa Dharai a little differently. And let me explain. Even though the conventional understanding of Kirpa is by and large limited to thinking of it as divine grace, we have to remember that the context is very important, and Kirpa is used in different contexts. Kirpa also refers to the process of surrendering to the self with conviction and love and devotion. And faith and devotion are the two foundational planks to self-realization in Sikhi. So therefore, Kirpa should not always be understood as divine. grace. We should look at the context. And the context, we will find that there is also the idea of Guru Kirpa, Gurbani Kirpa, and Atam Kirpa, your own Kirpa. Even though ultimately all of this subsumes into the Divine One, but we have to understand the distinction that is being made. In this verse, if we look at the context not only here, but also with the adjacent passages, one would have to conclude that it is Guru Kirpa that is being referenced here. In other words, the motivation that comes from the Guru Enlightener. As in passage 115, we are on 121. On page 188, it says, Sant Kirpa te japiye naam. So here, so jan rasna naam uchare. It is still naam that we are enunciating. And Kirpa would point to the Guru Enlightener, to the Sant. So Jako Apni Kirpa Dharai has been rendered as the one who is graced with motivation to submit. Apni Kirpa Dharai. Such a seeker, so Jan, recites the mantra of Gurmat, which is the immutable wisdom. So Rasna Naam Uchare has been rendered as recite the mantra for a reason, because we come across the word Uchare, and no matter how we look at it, Ucharana is to enunciate aloud, and then it is linked with Rasna, which is the tongue essentially, even though it reflects the intellect. But Rasna Uchare, and what is it ucharoing, so to speak? What is it enunciating? Naam, self-knowledge, which is Gurmat. So therefore, we should read this verse to mean that when this Guru Enlightener motivates you, or if you are graced with motivation to submit, then recite the mantra of Gurmat. And Gurmat is contained in the Sabad. So one begins with the tongue. One begins with recitation of the Sabad. One begins with enunciating aloud the Sabad. This is an important point to keep in mind. It means repetition also, even though there is a very strong opinion about this. But based on this verse, it's hard to conclude otherwise. So there is this notion of recitation of Sabad. And then the Guru comes to, in the second verse, Har Kirtan Sune, Har Kirtan Gave. This jan dukh nikat nahi aave. A repetition, basically. So starting with the tongue, enunciating aloud the mantra of Gurmat, Shabad, the Guru is saying, Har Kirtan Sune, Har Kirtan Gave. So what you enunciate, listen to it, sing it. In other words, assimilate it. This jan dukh nikat nahi aave. Then sorrow and happiness, unhappiness will not touch you. That's the key. So you recite aloud, you listen, and you sing along. That is how this process develops. Then, har ki tehel karat jan so hai, ताको माया अगन न पोह. Har ki tehel. This is the service to the Har self. The recitation of the Shabad aloud, the listening to the Shabad aloud, the singing, the assimilation of the Shabad. And so Shabad is wisdom. So there are elements in this wisdom that we have to think of. Not only is it wisdom in terms of enabling you a broad universal perspective to deal with situations as they arise, but it also is the container of virtue. So not only are you obtaining a perspective, but you're obtaining the perspective through divine virtue. You see how it works? And this is the service to the self, to develop virtues, and through virtues acquiring that wisdom which is immutable and innate to us. And the Guru says, Har ki tehel kart jan so hai. Now, a lot of translations say that seeker looks beautiful, so hai, sona lagda hai. But so hai has another meaning, which is soothing, calming. So serving the Har self through Har Kirtan, through Rasana Jap Naam, is soothing to the seeker. It is like a balm. And when you apply that balm, such a seeker then remains untouched by the fire of Maya. Then the world doesn't impact it. So this is how you develop immunity to Maya. And the conclusion is, Man, Tan, Mukh, Har Naam Dayal. When the seeker engages with self-knowledge, with the mind, with the body, with the mouth, that is through speech, through action, through thoughts, then that compassionate wisdom, Dayal, Naam Dayal, that wisdom is compassionate because that is one of its virtues. That compassionate wisdom will then give of itself to you. It'll bestow itself. And when that happens, Nanak says, Nanak tajiyale avar janjal. All other entanglements are then abandoned. Tajiyale, given up. Entanglements here, not only worldly entanglements, but the entanglement of other methods. On that note, until the next time, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.